I didn't let my husband attend his sister's wedding. We found out I was pregnant in September. My husband Jake and I were so excited, we told both our families the same day. His sister Dani was dating some guy she'd met through a family friend and got engaged in October, after knowing him for 3 months. My in-laws were thrilled because Dani had been complaining about wanting to get married for 5 years straight. At the engagement party, Dani mentioned she wanted the wedding by April 2025. Music Jake told his parents right there that my doctor said I couldn't travel after 30 for weeks. His mom just nodded music and changed the subject. They picked April 19th anyway. The wedding would be in Texas where Dani's fiancé lived. That's a 3.5-hour flight from us. I told Jake in February that I'd be 37 weeks music pregnant by then and couldn't go. His mom called him and said it was fine if I stayed home, but he had to come. I actually said okay at first because I figured it would be fine. Then we had an OB appointment music 2 weeks ago. I asked the doctor directly if Jake could travel during my 37th week. She looked at both of us and said music absolutely not. She said it would be like rolling dice, and if I went into labor, she couldn't stop it. Jake agreed right there that it was messed up. They picked that date knowing we probably couldn't make it. Last week, Jake told his mom we both weren't coming. She lost it. Music his dad called and said if Jake didn't show up, then he wouldn't go either. Like that was supposed to guilt us into changing our minds. Jake looked at me after the call and asked if maybe he could just go for the ceremony and fly back the same day. I said no. He asked if his music parents could stay with me while he went. I said no again. He tried saying his sister would never forgive him. I reminded him that Dani knew my due date when she picked April 19th. She knew I'd be 2 weeks away from giving birth. His whole family knew. They just didn't care. His mom started texting me directly. She said I was being selfish and controlling. She said Dani only gets 1 wedding day, and we could have more kids. I didn't even respond to that. Jake's dad called him again and said he was choosing me over his own sister. Jake told him he was choosing his music child, his actual child that was about to be born. Dani sent me a long message saying I was ruining her special day, and that I was keeping her brother from her on purpose. She said music if something happened to me during labor, that Jake's parents could just drive me to the hospital. We live 40 minutes from the hospital. She really thought that was a solid plan. The wedding was yesterday. Jake stayed home with me. His parents went but didn't music talk to us the whole week before. Dani posted pictures all day, and Jake's whole family was in them. His mom posted a photo with just Dani captioned, "My music only child who showed up." Jake's phone blew up from his cousins asking why he wasn't there. His aunt called him a bad brother. His uncle said music he was whipped. Nobody cared that I could literally go into labor at any moment. Jake turned off his phone after the ceremony ended. We sat on the couch and he didn't say anything for like an hour. Then he just said his sister planned her wedding on purpose to prove a point. Music that she wanted to see if he'd pick her or me. I asked him if he regretted staying. He said no. Then his mom called my phone. I answered and she immediately started yelling that I stole her son from his family. That I trapped music him with a baby. That Dani cried through half the reception because her brother wasn't there. I hung up. Jake took my phone and blocked his mom's number. Then he blocked Dani's number too. He said if they couldn't understand why he stayed home 2 weeks before his kid was born, then he didn't need to hear from them. His dad music texted him this morning saying the family was done with us. Until we apologized to Dani, Jake deleted it without responding. The rest of that day felt strangely quiet. Not peaceful, just hollow. Jake kept his phone face down on the coffee table like it might explode if he touched it again. Every so often it would buzz from blocked notifications still trying to get through. And he'd just flip it over harder like that would make the noise stop permanently. I could tell he was replaying everything in his head, the wedding, the photos, the captions. The words his mom used, all of it. I didn't say much because honestly, I didn't have the energy. Being that pregnant already feels like carrying a bowling ball strapped to your spine. And the emotional stress made it worse. My back ached, my feet were swollen. And the baby seemed determined to remind us she was very much present by kicking nonstop. That night, around 2 a.m., I woke up to Jake sitting on the edge of the bed. He wasn't crying, but he had that stare people get when something finally sinks in. He said quietly, they were never going to forgive me no matter what I chose. I asked him what he meant. He said if he'd gone to the wedding and missed the birth, or even almost missed it, they would have still blamed him for not being there enough. But because he stayed with me, they framed it like betrayal. Either way, he said, he was always going to be the villain as soon as he stopped doing exactly what they wanted. The next few days were tense. Not between us it was actually the most united we'd ever been. But with the silence from his family, his mom didn't reach out again. His dad didn't either. No apology, no checking to see if I'd gone into labor, nothing. Jake's cousins kept posting wedding photos. Group shots with captions about family first and blood before everything, which felt very intentional. Jake muted all of them. He said if people wanted to communicate in vague social media posts instead of actual conversations, he wasn't interested. 3 days later, I had a false labor scare. Contractions started around midnight and didn't stop for 2 hours. We went to the hospital, bags in the car, hearts racing. It turned out to be Braxton Hicks, but the nurse told us again very clearly that we were right to stay close and not travel. On the drive home, Jake was silent, gripping the steering wheel. Finally, he said if I'd been in Texas, and didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The baby came a week and a half later. Labor was long, messy, exhausting, and nothing like the calm birth stories people love to post online. At one point I remember looking at Jake and thinking, this is the person I need here. Not his sister, not his parents, him. When our daughter was finally born, he cried harder than I'd ever seen him cry. The first thing he said wasn't about his family, or the wedding, or the fallout. He said, I'm so glad I stayed. We didn't tell his family right away. We told my parents, my sister, a couple close friends. Jake said he wanted a few days where this moment was just ours and not overshadowed by guilt trips or passive-aggressive messages. I agreed. For once, we didn't owe anyone access when we did tell them. His mom responded with a single text, she's beautiful. I hope someday you understand what you took from your sister. Jake stared at that message for a long time. Then he typed, deleted, typed again, and finally just didn't respond. He blocked her again. This time, he said, it felt permanent. A week later, his dad showed up at our door unannounced. I was feeding the baby when Jake answered. I could hear raised voices from the hallway. His dad kept saying, you embarrassed us, and your sister will never forget this. And families don't do this to each other. Jake didn't raise his voice once. He said, you don't get to demand loyalty when you ignore my wife's medical reality. His dad tried to push past him to see the baby, and Jake stepped in front of the door and said, not like this. That was the moment, I think, when it finally clicked for his dad that the dynamic had changed. He left without seeing her. That night, Jake told me something he'd never said out loud before. He said Danny had always tested him. Birthdays scheduled on dates he couldn't attend. Emergencies that conveniently happened when he had plans. Constant comparisons between him and her. The wedding, he said, was just the biggest test yet. She wanted proof that she still ranked higher than anyone else in his life. And when she didn't get it, she burned the bridge herself. Now, weeks later, things are still quiet. Some relatives have softened. A few reached out with awkward congratulations. Danny hasn't, his mom hasn't either. And you know what? The world didn't end. Our daughter sleeps on Jake's chest every evening. Our house is filled with diapers and late-night feedings and a kind of exhaustion. That comes with love, not manipulation. Jake told me yesterday that if his family ever wants back in, it'll be on different terms. No guilt, no power plays, no ultimatums. If they can't accept that he chose his wife and child when it mattered most, then they don't get to rewrite the story later to make themselves feel better. And honestly, I don't feel guilty anymore. Not even a little dot story to my wife called me while I was visiting friends. I'm divorcing you and I've sold our business to start over with my new partner. She laughed. I replied calmly, good for you. When I got home, her cocky smile vanished when she saw. Chapter 1, the call that changed everything. It was a warm Friday evening, and I was sitting around a fire pit with 3 of my oldest friends. Beer in hand, laughter in the air, and for the first time in months, peace. My phone buzzed. Caller ID, Tessa, wife. Strange, we'd spoken earlier that day. Nothing seemed off, but I answered, hey babe, what's up? Her voice was cool, calculated, amused. Don't babe me. I'm calling to let you know I'm divorcing you. Effective immediately. Papers will be filed Monday, silence. Before I could respond, she kept going. And before you ask, yes, I've sold our business fully. The buyer already wired the money. I'm taking my half and starting a new life with Derek. Derek, my former business partner. A man I once called my best friend, she laughed. It was theatrical, cold. You should have paid more attention, Michael. You were always so busy with the numbers and systems. You forgot the woman beside you. My friends watched my expression carefully. I could feel the heat of the fire and the sudden icy weight of betrayal sink in. I sipped my beer, took a breath, and calmly replied, good for you. She paused, probably expecting anger, rage, desperation, but she got none of it. I hung up and quietly said to my friends, I think it's time I go home. Chapter 2, the smile that died at the door. I pulled into the driveway, headlights washing over the front of the house I built with my own hands. Every brick, every beam, every corner carried my sweat and sacrifice. Tessa stood on the porch, arms crossed, lips curled in a smug half-smile, wine glass in hand. Derek leaned against the railing beside her, dressed like he thought he owned the place already. Back already? She mocked. That was fast. You didn't even beg. I looked her over once, then turned to Derek. Good to see you again, partner, I said calmly. He scoffed. You still think we owe you a conversation? Not really, I said, unlocking the door. Just came to collect a few things inside. The house looked like it had been looted. My office was stripped. Our safe was wide open. She cleared out the joint accounts, even my late father's watch. The one I kept in the study drawer was gone. I returned to the living room. Tessa stood with her hip cocked, arms folded. You're not going to cause a scene, are you? I shrugged. Why would I? You sold the business, right? Exactly, and the papers are clean. Everything's legally binding. I even have Derek's lawyer on retainer. Don't worry, you'll get your half eventually. Derek added with a smug grin. Assuming you don't blow it all crying into your beers. They both laughed. I smiled politely, right? One question though. Tessa arched an eyebrow. What? When exactly did you sign the sale contract? She frowned. 2 days ago. Why? Interesting, I said, walking to the kitchen, grabbing a cold bottle of water and twisting off the cap. Because 3 days ago I moved all intellectual property and software rights to my name. Quietly, legally, with full documentation. You sold a company shell. Her face dropped. Derek's smirk twitched. What are you talking about? She demanded. I pulled a folded document from my inner coat pocket and laid it gently on the counter. This right here is a notarized transfer agreement. Our product, the software, the back-end systems, the analytics till Derek bragged about, all mine. The buyer you just sold to. They're about to realize they paid for a house with no foundation. Tessa lunged forward, snatching the paper, scanning it with frantic eyes. This isn't possible. I would have seen it. I tilted my head. No. You were too busy sneaking around with Derek. Chapter 3, A Meeting with the Millionaire. The next morning, I showed up at Price & Walton Holdings. The investment firm Tessa had sold her company to. Clean lobby, polished floor, cold air. The receptionist recognized me immediately. Mr. Carter, Mr. Price will see you now. I was escorted into a sleek glass-walled boardroom. There sat Gregory Price, the man who just 2 days ago thought he purchased a gold mine. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. You're here about the acquisition. I nodded and pulled a leather folder from my briefcase. Yes, I think you'll want to see these before your legal team finishes due diligence. His brow furrowed as he flipped through the documents. I prepared everything. The asset transfer, patent ownership, user licensing agreements, even the contracts confirming that the actual IP and backend belonged solely to me. As he turned the last page, his lips thinned. So what you're saying is I bought a company with zero functioning infrastructure? Exactly, I replied. All your newly purchased systems, codebase, analytics, customer data, engine access. They're all tied to licenses I now control. And your wife didn't know this? I smiled faintly. She was never interested in the legal side, just the finish line. Price leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. Then I assume you're here to offer a solution. I am, I said. I'm willing to license the full IP back to you for triple the original purchase price. He arched an eyebrow. Triple, call it a tax on ignorance, I said calmly. And betrayal? He tapped a pen against the folder for a long moment. You're ruthless, just smart, I replied. Something my ex underestimated. He leaned forward. You've got a deal. Meanwhile, back at my house, Tessa and Derek were sipping mimosas, still basking in what they thought was victory, until her phone buzzed. Email from Gregory Price. Terminating acquisition. Assets fraudulent. Your actions are under legal review. Expect your lawyers to contact you shortly. Then came the second from IRS. Your accounts are frozen pending investigation of suspicious business transfer activity. She dropped her phone. No. This isn't happening. Derek stared at her. What did you do? She grabbed the car keys and bolted. I'm going to find him now. Chapter 4, The Final Conversation. She pounded on the glass walls of my new co-working suite like a storm, drawing stares from the others inside. Michael, open the damn door. I didn't. I let her rage while I calmly typed out the final clause in a licensing agreement with Price's firm, smiled at the receptionist and then pressed the door unlock button. She stormed in. What the hell did you do? You sabotaged everything. My accounts are frozen. The deal's falling apart, and Price's legal team is threatening me with fraud. I looked at her. Really looked at her. Wild eyes, tangled hair, makeup smudged from tears she tried to hide. This wasn't the woman I married. That woman died the day she decided Derek was worth more than loyalty. You sabotaged yourself. Tessa, I said coldly. I just gave gravity a little help. She gritted her teeth. You want revenge? Fine, you got it. But give me back something. Half the deal. My share of the company, anything. I walked over to the filing cabinet, pulled out a sealed envelope and handed it to her. Here, this is what you're entitled to. She tore it open like it might save her life, but it was just a copy of the prenup. One she signed 5 years ago when she insisted she didn't care about money and just wanted us. They're in bold black ink, any business assets founded or developed by Michael Carter prior to or during the marriage shall remain his sole and undisputed property. She turned pale. This wasn't in the version I saw. That's because Derek had the final draft removed from your view. I kept the signed copy and made sure the notary had theirs filed, too. She staggered back. You're lying. I stared directly at her. Check with your lawyer. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Then came the knock at the door. 2 uniformed agents stood there with badges out. Tessa Carter, you're being served. IRS and civil fraud proceedings. She looked at me, horror dawning. You turned me in. No, I said with a bitter smile. Your name was on the fraudulent sale contract, not mine. Chapter 5, The Collapse. Tessa tried to fight it at first. She hired a new lawyer, then a PR firm, then a crisis consultant. But nothing could stop the momentum once the scandal went public. The business world loves success, but it feeds on betrayal. Screenshots of her emails with Derek leaked thanks to an anonymous tip from someone inside her own inner circle. Conversations where she bragged about milking the idiot husband dry and flipping the company and the man like old furniture. They spread like wildfire across LinkedIn, Reddit, and business forums. One headline went viral. From CEO to cautionary tale, the woman who tried to steal a business and lost everything. Even Derek abandoned her when Price's firm came after them for damages. He threw her under the bus, claiming she orchestrated the whole thing. She was left to face multiple lawsuits, a full IRS audit, and public humiliation. The life she tried to build off my back crumbling. Her power couple fantasy with Derek gone, the smug confidence replaced by a haunted hollow stare. Meanwhile, I rebuilt quietly. Price's team offered me a consulting contract. I declined. Instead, I started a new venture. Leaner, smarter. Mine alone. The licensing money I earned from my own company's IP set me up for life. But the best part, peace. No more walking on eggshells. No more second-guessing loyalty. One evening, I sat at a local coffee shop finalizing a proposal for a new partner. A real partner, Emma, someone I'd met months earlier during a quiet tech convention. She was brilliant, grounded, the kind of person who never made me feel small to feel big. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Michael, it's me. Please, I'm lost, I have nothing. I made a mistake. Please just talk to me. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I calmly pressed block. Epilogue, I never saw her again. But sometimes people would mention a woman they saw waiting outside courtrooms, clothes faded, once beautiful eyes now dulled with regret. And sometimes at networking events, people would pull me aside and say, hey, aren't you the guy whose ex tried to steal everything and lost it all? I just smiled. No. I'm the guy who already knew what was coming and let gravity do the rest. Was this revenge perfectly justified?